Well, good morning again. We're so glad you've decided to join us for this webinar entitled How to Create Comic Strips for Education and Outreach Across Disciplines. We're very pleased to have Dr. Justin Sharpe joining us all the way from the UK this morning. So it's morning time for us, evening time for him. Justin was just here a few months ago, actually, as the former research engagement specialist for the Vortex Southeast project. And as part of that team, he led stakeholder engagement activities that increased community and individual severe weather preparedness and response. He focused a lot on encouraging behavior change related to disaster risk reduction and resilience. And he had a particular focus on safer spaces in weather, in severe weather, and safe sheltering through improved knowledge, learning, and practice. He has a lot of research interests, and one of those is disaster risk reduction and also risk communication, which is what he's going to be focusing on today. Justin has his PhD in geography from King's College London. So, Justin, thank you so much for being willing to do this and from so far away. We're so fortunate to have you here with us, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much for that warm introduction. I'm going to try sharing my screen, so just give me a little minute here. We'll be switching one or two times today from out of the presentation and to the website itself as well. So I'm going to share. So could I just get an audible feedback there from you, Tracy, that you can see my screen and everyone can see everything?
I can see your screen and it's full screen. You're good to go.
Good, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you all for being here. It is late in the afternoon for me. Um, there's going to be a little bit of presentation at the beginning, but we're talking 10 or 15 minutes. The bulk of the time is going to be using the Pixton app itself. And I'm going to show you with my screen what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and how I play with it as well. I think one thing that I want you to take away from this is experimentation is good. You really can't mess anything up. It has a back button like anything else. You can use Control Z like you'd undo something that you're typing as well. So that's really good. So we're going to start to do that. I did, and I asked Tracy to send things out, but there was a little bit of homework beforehand. Now, if you haven't done it, now's the time to do it while I'm talking, maybe on another screen or just opening a window on your computer. Having a Pixton.com account is useful for following along because you can see what you're doing and follow along from what I'm doing. There is a free account access for 30 days. You can set it up and cancel it immediately. I pay for my Pixton. I pay $9.99 a month and I absolutely love it. I have an educator account because a lot of what we're doing here is really about education. And so despite not being like directly linked into like say teaching at a college or teaching at a school, they still allow you to do that. Also, when I've produced things in the past, and this is something that's really useful to know, I've said, well, we're going to produce this, we're going to put this out there and things like that. Is that still allowed? Does it, do we cross any copyright boundaries? And they've been really generous to say, no, if it's for education and as long as you're not making money from it or it's in something that's making money, then you're good to go. So that's just something really worth thinking. There was a concept framing there. It might be useful if you've got that. And there's a planning example. And what I've done is go, okay, here are 6 panels of a comic. What might I put in here? What might I put in here? That's not necessarily to be looking for now, but by doing it, it makes you think about what you're going to do. It's easy to go, oh yeah, we'll have a comic for something. It'll be great. It won't be great unless you plan it. It won't be great unless there's a point to it. It won't be great if it's an add-on. But if you're using it as a different way of engaging with people and with different audiences and with people with different literacy levels and different languages even, then it can be an excellent tool. So with that in mind, why on earth do we do this? So I'm just going to flick through these. Um, they can help your ideas become more understandable for people. A lot of us work in quite abstract scientific fields, and while they're not abstract for us, well, they kind of are. Do you remember your first day at a new organization? When I was working at CERO, and then I was working between the National Severe Storms Laboratory and CERO on tornado risk and on the societal impact side. The number of acronyms made my head explode, and I'm sure you've all been through that. Well, actually, think about that, and then think about you need someone to understand what those, tell you what those things mean. I'd always do an acronym check, but again, people who maybe don't have the highest level of education or are even new to the country and haven't experienced certain hazards, say, for instance, and this is from my perspective, and then come to this country and are experiencing new hazards, well, they might need that broken down a little bit more. So there's sometimes this knowledge gap between, what we know and what we want to communicate and what is actually communicated, but not just communicated, but communicated well. And I think that's really key here. And this is why comic strips can be very, very powerful because you could break things down. The thing that I've learned most from comic strips is it makes me think about what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. And then what visual element can I use to enhance that? So, that's useful. But what it does is break learning down into bite-sized chunks, and that's good because you've only got small panels with small amounts of words on there, and you don't want to put too many words in there. The learning takes part gradually. I think one of the other things that's brilliant about comics is that the reader places themselves in that situation or feels affinity with one of the characters, and you're pulling for that character. And I think that that's good, and that can help make the overall process less daunting. And then this is the kind of more sciencey stuff. Boosting those efficacy beliefs. If this character can do it, if they can make these small changes, and this is what I tried to do with the comic strip, not try and rewrite things or just assume that everyone has exactly the same resources, but say, let's try and break this down into the bite-sized chunks. And that's what the comic strip does. That might help boost self-efficacy beliefs, not necessarily response efficacy, because they kind of have to test that for themselves. So a little bit of background years ago, and I mean years ago, in 2000, was it 2000? I set up a website in 2007, 2008 called edufordrr.org. It still exists. And then around about 2011, 2012, I started creating a comic book character called Silly Timmy, and that's what's on the screen here. And this shows all the different characters. I did this using an iPad app. Again, I was cheeky. I reached out to the developer and said, can I use this for education and not anything else? And he went, oh, sorry, excuse me. And he said, yeah, absolutely fine. That's really good. In the end, this got turned into a book in Pakistan by UNESCO, and some of the characters were changed. But it just frames things nicely. The author, the guy who created the app, was amazed at how I use some of the graphics. So I used pillows to show snow for an avalanche, and he went, "I've never even thought of doing that," because you had a very limited palette. And that's the opposite of what we're going to have today. We're going to have a very large palette, and I don't want you to be overwhelmed by that. And that's why I'm going to show you some shortcuts and some ways to get around that. So, um, this is really important. Although you can put a large amount of information in a panel, that information isn't just words. It is visual. It can be zooming in on a character's face, changing the lighting for mood, creating tension, even in a flat two-dimensional image, such as a comic strip. So this is what really this is all about here. And I never read my kind of PowerPoints out. They're there for you to read and me to kind of explain what's really going on. But I think that's really, really good, again, to help the reader not just follow, but maybe put themselves in the place of the character. And I can say that I've done this through research with kindergarten children in Tehran, in Iran, from 2010. We used the Silly Timmy comic strip with kindergarten children there to explain earthquake risks. And they placed themselves in the position there and they started talking about their pet. Why? Because Silly Timmy has a dog. And so they were talking about their dog, their cat. They started placing themselves even at that young age in those panels. And that's why it's quite cool. And the other thing we can do is communicate in different languages. I'm not going to rush through this. There is also a QR code on the screen there. So if you've got your phone, it's quite useful. But I tried to create a comic strip, well, I have done, for children and families. But one of the things that I wanted to do was actually think about people who maybe have family who come from different countries, speak different languages, and don't understand necessarily, say, what a tornado watch is or a tornado warning. If they come from Peru, which is like the case here, they'll have amazing experience of earthquakes because they are frequent and it's taught in schools what you should do. But that's not the same for tornadoes because these are not frequent at all. So this is a one way of doing it. And you'll notice in that third panel there, we switch into Spanish because the character is bilingual. And then we've used the orange box at the bottom. And I call this the explainer box, the meanwhile box. You can see the middle box. It says, oh, look, later that day after lunch. So it gives you some clues that time has passed. But I've used this here to create a direct translation of the Spanish. And by the way, The Spanish translation was done by a trusted friend of mine who's from Puerto Rico and speaks fluent Spanish. So I didn't just chuck it into some like AI tool or something like that. So, and I think that's very important to do as well. And then the final bit of like comics that I've made in the past and things like that. This particular one, when I was working at CIRA and the NSSL, I was the person that kind of developed the Tornado Tales app. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to try and get generalizable information from the public. And so one of the things that we did is we created the app. It took well over like a year and a half to develop. Most of it was actually in the pandemic when I was back in England. And we then tested that in the field, and that's what these panels are really showing here about how we then use those same questions in the field and then how that led to other things as well. So I created this as a poster, by the way, and I took it to a conference and I explained it to people as well. And people really engaged with that because it was a very creative way from their perspective of showing something that could be very dry. Like, trust me, going through the OMB process is very dry. It's an important process if you want to be collecting data on behalf of any government organization, definitely, but it is not necessarily the most interesting thing. But we still explored it in the comic strip just to try and kind of show that it does take time. You don't do something like this overnight. Now, this is kind of a methodology about maybe that I would think about and when I'm like planning some sort of work. So the objective might to be assessing whether the preschool children can engage with DRR. The participants were kindergarten students in Iran. What do we use? The custom comic strips that I showed you. Some of the frames were left intentionally blank so that back in the classroom, children could write their own stories in there, or they could describe that thing and tell the story themselves. That can be used really effectively to find out how much comprehension there is. Really important that. And then that's outside data collection and analysis. But I bet some of you are going, well, for someone who's talking about communication, that's not very clear. Yes. And that's why I did that intentionally. Now we've split it up into panels. It just helps bring things up. Now, I am going to say one thing and criticize myself here. Me being kind of like thinking about things in more of a social science way and a bit more of sort of a high level way. I've put the big analysis thing there and I've talked about triple loop learning and all that sort of stuff. There's probably too much information in that final panel there. If it was a comic strip, I probably wouldn't try and cram too much information in there. So that's something to kind of to think about as well. And by the way, it's something I learned about as well, because it's like it's great being on here, but I went, oh, but I've kept it in there anyway. But the idea is that it's broken up and you can see the frames. Normally with comics, by the way, you read left to right, top to bottom, unless of course you're in, so I'd say Japan reading manga or some Middle Eastern countries where you might be reading from right to left. And again, if you're working in those contexts, you need to be thinking about those things as well. It's not just a simple case of translation. It's also about how things are read. Okay, so these are some learning objectives. We are going to create the educational comics using Pixton. I'm going to slow down, by the way. I'm going fast now because I want to get to the exciting bit. I'm going to prepare learners with the idea of the focus concept, and then we're going to see how these visuals can be used to create urgency and emotion. Now, you may have all come from different fields, different backgrounds, and you may, if you've done the homework and you've started to think about what you'd like to be making a comic about today, then maybe you've got that thought in your head. If you haven't, by the way, don't worry, we will still create something today. It's very much about, okay, this is how you use this particular app and do that. And then we can think about how this can be applied to like so this is the concept framing that I actually put into the into the that Tracy sent out, by the way. I apologize. So you can think about what is the situation, what is happening or being set up. Is there a decision? It really should be that the character needs to take. And then what action does either the character or another character or an event, so it could be a storm, it could be you know, like a tornado if you're sort of coming from my field, or an earthquake or something like that. How does that precipitate them needing to take the right action, and how are you trying to explain that in the comic? And then that gives us that what our lesson learned. So this could be applied to many different things, and that's why these are very vague. What is happening or being set up? What does the character need to do? How is that character interacted with, either by something happening or another character talking to them? And then finally, is there a sort of lesson or takeaway that might be learned? Now, by the way, the lesson or takeaway might be 32 panels later. So this is not something that is, oh, it's always, you know, obvious up front. And sometimes if it is a bit too obvious up front, do you engage the reader? Do you give them that bit of mystery? Do you give them that bit of tension that's kind of important? Sorry, got carried away with with the PowerPoint then. So the Pixton, if you don't know, is a web-based comic creator. It creates custom avatars and scenes. I'm going to take you through how to do that today. It's a drag and drop interface and it has exportable graphics. One caveat with the exportable graphics that I found is that, so someone asked me when I did something similar to this, and it was just a generic overview of things, can you put in your own images? And you can to a certain degree, but when it comes to then making the exportable graphics, it won't always allow you to put those things on the top. So it leaves a blank space there. So then you need to do a little bit of photoshopping. And I say this for instance, I've included QR codes in, say, the last panel. One of the things we created a comic was talking about loss. And then the QR code was going to 10 different psychological resources that, the reader could go to. So that's just one caveat there that I just wanted to kind of like let everybody know. And then again, we've got low barrier to action. We have that visual consistency. We have the same character throughout. That's kind of nice as well. People can come back to that. And you can base it on a scenario, and it is adaptable across topics, which is why I'm hoping we've got people from lots of different fields here today, and not just one sort of thing. So we need to be thinking about, first of all, creating who our avatar is, whether it's, look, it's me, although that's an old me. We're going to create a new me today because I've got a moustache and my hair's lighter. And I don't have glasses on today. What sort of dialogue do we have? I find that I'll do dialogue and I'll go back in and I'll correct dialogue over time, or I'll simplify it. So the first draft, like anything, like any good writing, the first draft is not necessarily the final draft. And I think that's really important. The other thing is get someone to read it through as well, because sometimes with those tiny little comic bubbles, you'll miss something, or you have an extra R in where you didn't want it, and can be a pain to kind of mess around with later on. With our avatars, I think what's important, the design is simple. If you're working with a specific audience, so if you know that you're working with a predominantly African American audience in a particular part of the country, say, for instance, then having African American characters and families is really important, because we identify with people who look like us, who sound like us, who dress like us. That's kind of that human nature. So I tried to do that in the comic strips, and the Faith and Hope ones, which you'll see a little bit later, actually shows that as well. And then backgrounds and settings, right? Realistic environments is cool. You do not want to get so carried away with, oh, I can drop this in and a phone and a this and a, because then it becomes busy and it takes away from the message, or maybe takes away from the tension you're trying to build, or the story or narrative you're trying to build. So it's sort of less is more, but it doesn't mean that it's sparse. It's not supposed to be like kind of experimental cinema. So panel flow and spacing. One thing that we tend to do is think about a before, during, or after, or cause, effect, action. And the panels can be shown to use the change. We're going to be sort of working broadly, thinking about 6 panels today. It's going to take us a bit of time because we're going to be doing this from scratch and creating our characters and things like that. But we can show change over time. And you'll notice one thing that I did earlier on, if we're going back to it, if I used that yellow box and said sometime later, brilliant to show how time moves forward when we're doing something like this. So finally then, in terms of this character's shouting, by the way, you're going to see this here. This is someone shouting. If it was a thought bubble, they'd be thinking, but you can even have a little dotted one, which is a whisper. And I think that's really important. So you can think about how you're communicating. You can have people shouting, you can have people talking, you can have people whispering, you can have people thinking about things as well. And this is kind of what this slide's kind of showing you as well. Visual clarity, so with some made up people, limit the text, avoid clutter, and focus the viewer attention, because that's really important. Because again, if it's a bit boring, if there's no real storyline there, it's not going anywhere, if there's no humor even, I always have a little bit of humor in there. Not in any way to undermine the message, but because we all have little moments when we'll be looking at each other a little way, or someone will say something that's, let's say, slightly silly, or does something, in the case of Silly Timmy, that was important to have that consistent humor. And so what I did there is Silly Timmy would always kind of make a silly decision, hence Silly Timmy. His dog would often growl to warn him, but he didn't listen to his dog. And then the fairy godmother character in that particular comic would come along and kind of solve things and would speak in rhyme at the end as well to kind of get the message across. And so there was always that consistency. By the way, I built up 3 or 4 panels of those comics and I did 52 of them. The idea of that was to put them in like a free newspaper once a week and for actually people to come back and go, oh, what's happened to Timmy this week? What's the story? And that was all built around disaster risk reduction. So that's something that's important. So again, I'm not going to go over this one, but emotion does support memory as well. And those visual clues reinforce urgency, but they also can show the right thing to do as well as the wrong thing to do. And that's what Silly Timmy does. It shows the wrong thing to do. And then we talk about the right thing to do. And then that opens discussion in classroom spaces or with the public or anything else that you're wanting to do as well. Do you remember I talked about this is faith and hope? They're doing the right thing here. One's come over to the other one's house. The reason we developed this was Tracy talked about safer spaces. So the idea behind safer spaces was that you would go for a visit when there was severe weather on the way. So in that tornado watch phase, when they're really starting to hype it up on the weather and then on the TV news, and you will kind of know who you follow when it's a serious day versus a it may happen day. When that happens, if people are in mobile manufactured homes, which account for more than 50% of all the fatalities and have done for about 40 years, in tornadoes, we're trying to encourage them to go visit somewhere. Time for a visit. Go and visit your friend, go and visit a family member who lives in a permanent site-built house or maybe has a basement or something like that. So she's done this here. She goes around to her friends. They're looking at the phone, and we go from, right, we know what we're doing. But then the other person's going, oh, that looks scary and it's close to my place. And actually, it's important this because later on she does lose her place, but she wasn't in it. So there's something there. And then we turn the power out. And I'm going to show you how to do this. You can have night and day in the comics at a click of a button. And that's really good. Again, the full comic, if you're interested, is at that QR code. We will make the PowerPoint presentation available, but I know that people who signed up have already been sent this as well. So I've not really changed anything apart from, I think, my name on it. So obviously, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, we kind of need to approve this. But before we do, just some other tools apart from Pixton. Canva.com can be really good to sketch out some ideas, thinking about those things. You could also work as a team on Google Docs to collaborate on an idea or storyboard as well. Some really key message that you're trying to get across. Start off with something simple. Start off with something that's not too onerous. Don't try and do it all in one go. You'll learn and get better as time goes on. And I think that's really good. You could always use something like a mind mapping tool. And these links, by the way, work to different things. The Miro.com link there goes to a mind mapping toolkit that I used when I was working with some students, PhD students in a Canadian university. And we created an animation and a game rather. We created a game to actually show about water resources. So you might find that useful. And then Pixton itself, which now brings us over to this. So I am going to click on the Pixton link. It will open a new window. I will have to come out of this screen sharing and I will then go into that screen sharing. So just to let you know, skip verification. And then I need to go back to Zoom. He says, oh, sorry. Share Pixton. So, Tracy, can you just confirm that you're all seeing the Pixton front login page for me, please?
Yes, absolutely. We're seeing your login.
Perfect. That's good. And I can see that I'm good for time. So now, hopefully you've already done something. You can click on 30-day trial if that's the thing that you're doing, but I'm going to log in. Could you just kind of put in the chat or the Q&A or whatever it is, whether you've managed to, just a Y for yes, whether you've managed to, sign up for a Pixton account or something like that. And by the way, I'm not selling these darn things. That's not why I'm here. It's just for the purposes of this so that I've got an idea of who's able to follow along and play. And Tracy, if you could feedback numbers when you know.
Justin, it looks like we have at least one person that does have a Pixton account.
Okay. So you might want to use this time to go and get one. Um, it's a 30-day trial. I set mine up. You can then set it up and literally immediately cancel it, and it will still be a 30-day trial and you don't get billed for anything. So that's kind of how I do things to find out whether I'm interested in them in or not. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through to the login page and then show you kind of how you do things from there. And then I'm going to show you how we do things. So I'd logged in earlier on, but just for argument's sake, if I hadn't, I always log in with my Gmail account, my kind of like the one that I use more for work and professional things. So that's the first thing there. You'll see is me, and there's an old avatar of myself there. You'll also see this was, I'm going to click on it. This was a comic strip that I created for an old webinar that we did, or the last webinar that we did. It wasn't it wasn't as practical based as this, but actually at that we realized that, excuse me, we needed to do something that was practical based. And so this is what this is here. And all of this is editable. And again, you can just click on the background and you'll notice there was a download thing there as well. So I'm gonna I'm trying to work out here whether people will manage to get themselves signed up for things or whether people just want to follow along with me. So again, if you want to follow along, can you just put an F in the comments thing there or in the Q&A, and so that I know how I'm approaching this? Because obviously a load of people following along with me and clicking and doing stuff is different from a load of people just watching. So again, I'm going to be quiet, give you about 30 seconds to do that, and Tracy, if you feedback for me. Thank you. Because I'm English, it gives me time to sip some tea.
Justin, it looks like we have a couple of people that have a Pixton account and that are going to create and follow. And it looks like we have others that are just going to follow along for now and maybe create an account later. So is that
That's absolutely fine. So I'm going to go slow on both counts. So just to let you know. So the first thing I'm going to do is, like, you got this thing here. Yes, you've got loads of comics. You won't have loads of comics if it's your first time in here. Although it's got comics there, we are going to go to a custom character, and this is what's fun for everyone. So you can see all of my characters that I've created there: Myrtle, Aunt May, Joseph, Cass, Bill, Hope, and down here Faith. Look, this was my original Justin Sharpe that was down there. I'm saying that this guy, he appears, or in June of this year, finally, after like about several years of waiting for the book to come out. There is a 3-volume book on disasters, like an academic book, and this guy features in the very last chapter of the book, because I talk about how I use comic strips in disaster risk reduction. And it's an academic article, but it's the first academic article written as a comic strip in the world. So I'm kind of pleased with that. I created this character yesterday, but I'm going to create a new character. So if you are in Pixton, you can want to go up and just click on new character. If you're following along, that's absolutely fine. I'm an adult, so I'm going to click adult. And I'm male, so I'm going to click male. But I like the fact that they have female, male, and non-binary. I think that it kind of gives people choice. I'm kind of this body shape, but you can choose whatever you would like. And then it's random and it's grey, so we don't know anything about this. So this is an unbuilt avatar right now. And it starts off with skin tone. And I'm English, so I'm kind of probably down there, but I don't know if I'm. Yeah, it's hard to tell. I always find this a little bit hard to do actually, but I'm just ugh. Okay, I'm gonna stick with that. You'll notice there is a back button and a forward button. So if I don't like something, I can go back, but I can also go into all of the other different menu options here as well and sort of skip ahead. We're not going to do that, and I've not got advanced click on right now because I'm trying to keep everything simple. They've actually updated this interface this year as well, but they've not made it overly complex. So, okay, once we've got skin tone, hair color is important. And so I'm kind of going to go for my little bleachy look that I've got going here. The only thing that always bugs me about this, it always gives you exactly the same eyebrow colors, and I'm like, I want to change my eyebrow colors as well, but it doesn't allow me to do that. And it has not glasses on or anything like that. But you've got an idea, and you might go at the moment, well, that doesn't look like me yet, because there's other things that we can do. So we can create our hairstyle. It's sort of maybe like that or like this. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. You can choose, no, but you can choose, whatever you think is kind of useful. I could give myself this kind of, yeah, there you go. There's a nice little man bun there I've got going on if I want to as well. But I'm going to kind of keep it simple and kind of think about sort of the hairstyle that I probably had yesterday, which is only slightly one of these slightly jaggedy ones, or maybe, yeah, there you go. That's about closest right now. And I do have a moustache, so I'm going to put in a moustache as well. And again, this is just fun. You can play around with this and kind of go, oh, that's a good one, or is that a better one? Actually, I think that one's probably better. And you can do full on facial hair as well. So I mean, I've just put that in, but you can put in loads of different beard types and things like that as well. So you can kind of go crazy with this, and that's what's nice about it. I've got hazel green eyes. So I've put those in. That's somehow made me look evil. Don't know why. And you can play around with things like the nose as well. Think about what your nose looks like. I don't know if my nose looks like this or not. I kind of I'm not always brilliant at these things, but again, it's just for demonstration purposes. And then glasses, I kind of put those on. And I kind of looks vaguely European, so I'm in Europe now, so it's kind of I think that's acceptable. And then you can even change the glasses color, which I love, by the way. They didn't used to do that, so you might have some really funky glasses colors, or that sort of stuff. And I think that's quite nice actually. So many people do wear glasses, but I'm going to keep it like this because that's kind of normally what I have. And then face shape. I can't remember if I'm a bit more. Oh no, I'm not quite like that. That's potentially okay. Nope, there you go. That's me. Yay. So again, you've got to think about this. Now, the other thing to say is I'm creating me, and that's lovely. But you might want to create other people as well. I've created like there was a student who I'd worked with on the Tornado Tales, and we were giving a presentation at the AMS, and I created a character for her and included her in the kind of comic strip thing as well. Again, I'm not bothered too much about lips, but I kind of that looks about right. Ear shape. I mean, seriously, I've got tiny ears, so maybe that'll do. Um, and then you can actually create freckles. I don't have freckles. I always wanted freckles, but I don't have freckles, so I'm not going to add that. So that there is nothing is ticked, but I could choose any one of these things. It doesn't give you a million things, but it gives you enough. And again, my expression line is kind of smiling, but it's kind of like grimacing slightly. So I feel like I was like on a bike ride getting to a top of a hill rather than actually smiling. The other thing is my eyes are looking off to the side. That is something that we can correct when we do something in the comic itself. This I love. Find an outfit. So you could put business casual, if I could spell that is. There you go. Business casual is there, and it comes up with those outfits. But I'm going to go for something a little bit more informal today, so I'm just going to say casual, and then I've put that in there, and then I'm going to kind of choose something that I think, oh yeah, that looks nice, um, you know, uh, that sort of thing. So again, I think. Yeah, this is what I had yesterday, but I kind of like this. I also like his stance just now, and that's the last thing we're going to do here. See, I've got to say that I'm a bit short, so that's true, but it's fine. It doesn't shrink you to comic sizes. And then you can do this here. I genuinely actually at the moment quite like this kind of relaxed pose at the moment. But you could actually start having expressions there. Oh, I'm strong, or I'm just got my hands by my side, or maybe I'm like, am I being defensive, or am I kind of showing you I'm a bit annoyed? The arms being crossed can show those sorts of things. Or am I doing a TED presentation where they all seem to have exactly the same posture all the time because they're coached? But I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to click done. And hopefully, if you're following along, you've done the same thing too. If you're a little bit behind or something, that doesn't really matter. I'm going to download the full body one. Now, this will download into my downloads folder, which you can't see, but I know that it's going to come up on screen. And for that, I'm going to click Done. Now, the good thing about this is I'm going to say just in the newest. It will change because my hair and changes all the time. But hey, we're going to just stick with that. That means that gives me a nice visual clue there about what I want. But I've got all of these other characters here that I can use at an other time. So with that, I'm going to pause for a second. Tracy, are there any comments or Q&A type stuff in the chat there that you've received that you kind of want to share with me? Is anyone not certain of something or confused or want me to explain something from this side of things again?
I don't see any questions right now, but we can pause and see if any come in. If you've got a
Yeah.
question for Justin, this is a great time to ask it.
Okay.
I don't see anyone typing
That's okay.
just
That's
yet, but
perfect.
anytime
Yeah.
you want to, you can put those comments in the chat box.
Wonderful. So with that in mind, let's go and kind of create a comic. And this is going to be fun in a way because we kind of make something up. And I started yesterday and I started thinking about severe weather, but I'm going to click on edit because that was all done yesterday. And I'm going to do a few things here and then we can come back to them in a second. Um, in fact, I'm going to clear that panel. So we're starting from scratch. So that's a really good thing because we're all on exactly the same page. So did everyone manage to get in there that that wanted to? Now, just while you're thinking about that, describe a scene. So this is a new thing that it's done. Someone shout out, not literally, but someone shout out and tell me a scene that they'd want to do. And this is going to prove to you that you can do this with no preparation. So I'm not going to just come up with something. We're going to work on it together now. So we're going to be thinking about a screen. So we have if we get some ideas in the chat in the Q&A there, we'll I'll ask Tracy to read them to me. We'll choose one that we think could be good. Now, describing a scene is good, but also maybe describing a story or something that you think would be important to get across in a few panels. That is also a great thing to do. And we'll start off from that scene and take it from there. And you'll see the thought process, but also the creative process as we go.
Downed power lines in an urban area, Justin.
Oof, oof. Don't know if we get that. Downed power lines. Whoops. Sorry, my I have to say that my magic search, ooh, that's new. I think that's kind of using their AI tools. I don't know if that'll work or not. It's not understood that very well at all, has it? Let's just try power lines. There's also something else that I know that I can kind of do. Yeah, that's not very good. Okay, so let's do. I'm going to try earthquake because weirdly, recently they did put in like a tornado, which I noticed that they hadn't have before. Okay, that's okay. And so, okay, let's try war. I know it sounds a bit weird, but sometimes we can actually have things that are a little bit kind of desolate, something like that. Haha. Look what I spotted in the background there. I think that counts as a down power line, don't you? And actually, we don't know what's happened here. So this could be something that, as is suggested, is from war, but it could also be from a hurricane. It could also be from an earthquake. It could also be from, a tornado. So there's several things that it could be there. And I think that that's quite nice. Again, that's about imagination. How do you imagine that? How do you think about that? So with that in mind, I'm going to get rid of the war for a second. So, okay, we've got this, but apart from seeing this, there's no emotion here. It's just a grayed out scene. It could be anywhere. There's no people in it. There's no animals in it. It's very hard to create emotion. Now I could place myself in there, but actually, I could kind of create other people there. So if I go over here, I've got characters. And you'll notice there are general characters, history characters, real people. My custom characters are along the bottom of the screen there. And you can sort of scroll along and actually see those from the past, and there are all of my custom characters there. Um, so I'm not going to necessarily put one of those in necessarily, but I just wanted to kind of show you that. And then if you click back, now I think it would be a bit strange if we had someone in flip-flops and sunglasses going through there. Um, but we could have we don't want a historical person necessarily, but they have literary characters and things like that. If you work with children, that's really good. They even have real people, which I find strange. And now this is new as well. Toons. I personally wouldn't use them unless the whole aesthetic was using them, and we're going for very, very young children. But again, we can search characters. So what we could have is an old man. I'm just going to just put old man and see what we get. I mean, that's not great. So I think we can probably do better than that. Uh, Older person, maybe. I mean, I have my own characters as well, but like, okay, let's just put this person in a business suit there as well, and we're going to call them an adult. We're going to say male. We've got that thing. I quite like this now. Let's actually start to do that, and I'm going to add the character. And then the character's there. Now, you click on the character, and I love this. You can make that character very large. You can bring him closer to the front of the thing. You can put him, obviously, you're not going to make him really large and across the back of the thing there, but you can do this. You can also have him facing different ways. And you can do things like have his um we'll get on to describing his face in a second there as well. But I quite like this thing here because it's almost like a why pose. Like, why has this happened? And actually, I don't think that that is totally kind of out of the ordinary when people have kind of experiencing loss. I'm also going to make him a little bit smaller there as well. You can have him walking as well, that sort of thing, and then faces we've got emotion now. Like, he's crying out. So, I mean, again, that's a bit heavy, and I'm not saying that we should necessarily do that, but it does show you in just a few clicks how you can you starting to create emotion. But I think we need to add something else here as well, and that is words. So, we can have a caption. So, what am I saying? I'm going to say why. Why? Now, I've just noticed something here. We want the words. I don't want the words like that necessarily. I want the words to be coming out of his mouth rather than anything else. Now, they've changed something here, so this could be interesting because I didn't ask them to do that. I didn't ask them to do that. So you could actually have it there, and that could then lead into the picture. But normally down here, although we've got this why has this happened? Normally what happens is there are a series of, there's like a speech box here, like caption boxes. And that's kind of worrying me a little bit because that's not happened to me before. So I'm going to just quickly browse through this. Tracy, while as I'm doing this, and are there any other ideas that people had for things?
Ideas for a different background scene or for something
Maybe,
for
or a
this.
story or something
Okay.
like where are we going from here? I think
Okay.
that's probably something to be thinking about
Okay.
as well. Um, and I don't understand why he's not got the speech box here. That's kind of really weird. Because normally there's a speech box as well, which kind of
Justin, what are
helps.
the options? I noticed like on the scene that you're doing at the
Hmm.
far bottom right, there's like
Hmm.
looks like in the actual cartoon itself, it looks like there's a yeah, that. What are those? Are those extra?
So that means you can do something to character. I don't know if that edits your character, or can you see they've got a bin there? You can get
Let's
rid of
see.
that. So let's say you go, oh, I really hate that background. You can just do that and start all over again, or you can do the same for the character as well. What we've still not got though is the words thing here because it's kind of bothering me because whenever I've done this before, and you've seen the comics that I've shown you as well, there are speech bubbles. And that just comes from clicking words, and it's kind of worrying me that it's not doing that because I don't know whether they've tried to be a bit of a smarty pants. So I've come out of this. This is only one panel now, and I can click on edit. So I'm going to see if that works. Yeah, it's not working. It's gonna. It's, I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. Also, I know the grammar's terrible. Why has this happened? Question mark. I'm sure there's people yelling in the chat. But yeah, that's something. So okay. So I'm going to kind of. I'm going to do a duplicate panel because maybe he moves across the panel. Yes, go on.
Okay,
Keep talking.
so Michael says that if you click on the character and then click speak, the bubble should come up. There you go.
Oh, there you
Add
go. Yeah,
speech.
yeah,
There we
yeah.
go.
Sorry, that's really weird. See, I knew that was weird. They've changed the interface recently. That was just there in the past. So well done, Michael. I'll appreciate that. So let's try that again. Why? And this creates a bit. So why has this happened? So I like that. And then we can click back on that. And then this guy needs a name. I'm just going to call him Saul. It's a bit. Saul has uh, left his safe space after the tornado. Dot, dot, dot. And there you go. We get this. Now, actually, I'm going to put that at the top because I think that's better. Why is this happening? You'll notice I can move the speech bubble. And I think that's quite nice. So now we've got an idea of a narrative. I'm going to go back to the one that was there before, and I'm going to remove the panel that was um, because like we need to put in a something new. So so I'm going to add a panel now, and I'm going to do a duplicate panel for now because we're sort of going to move through this scene. Um, so now it's kind of thinking about, you know, maybe he's walking as well, and so that's the other thing that you'd actually do. You wouldn't be jumping or skipping. Um, and again, we can click here and we can put walking. And that's really nice. You'll notice what I did there. I kind of just did walking, and then it should filter all of the different walking paces. And what's interesting is you'll note that my characters kind of got a bit more around the middle, and so have all my characters here on the main part of the screen there as well. So I think that that's kind of useful. And I just kind of okay, so there you go. Again, we kind of you know. So now what we kind of need to do is think, uh, I need to find my friend. So, okay, we're starting to get a bit of a story here. And then if we click on this, we can actually say like, so his friend um, who couldn't get to a safe space. And I put paste, but space. There you go. So do you see we're starting to create a story now? We're starting to create a narrative. And out of nothing, really. It's like literally we had a down power line. And from that, I've gone, okay, what can we do with that? Um, so what happens next? I think we need to decide this together and let's try and build this together. Does he meet someone? Is he go to another place? Where would he go to get information? Where would he try and find that thing? Would he just try and go to his friend's house or location? How would he get there? Would there be blocked roads? What comes next? And again, I'm going to leave that open for about 20, 30 seconds and I want you to decide and we'll try and build that from there. Also, while that's occurring, is everyone okay with the pace? Can you all see what I'm doing? Am I going too fast, too slow?
Justin,
Hmm.
Vanessa said he finds an injured animal on the way.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
that and Vanessa also shared that this is a great tool and that she does work in the ag and farmer stress space, and she's looking forward to working with it to help inform conversations and share. resources.
Wonderful. Good. I think that's this is to show you that it is reasonable tool to use with a little experimentation. I am experienced with this tool, but I got tripped up because things were a bit weird. Lighting, by the way, I can immediately turn that into night. We're not going to because we started the story in day and that'd be a bit weird. But actually, again, that creates a little bit of tension as well. So that's something to do, and I'm just going to turn it back to what it was. And the other thing you can do is create weather. It might be windy, it might be rainy still after the storm. Although probably wouldn't be out without a rain jacket, and you wouldn't want to put lightning there like that in that particular way. But you kind of get an idea of the different conditions that you can do. You know, you can kind of create light rain or even trying to create a like, oh, look, it's really windy. I mean, that looks like an old type of TV almost looking at that. So you can, you know, that you can be very creative with what you're doing. So, okay, so we're going to do a blank panel here, and I'm going to try, let's try conflict again. I want to see if there's something else. Ugh. Uh, is that a little bit similar to what we've got? It's a little bit similar, but it's also not a million miles like it's not. I wonder if you can. No, I was going to say, wonder if you could flip the image. Some the characters you can flip around it in a different way. So, and then we need our character. Oh, we want the same dude. Can we copy him? See, again, I'm kind of doing this on the. I'm not sure he'll work as copying. I just kind of grabbed him there. Ah, okay, I didn't mean to do that. But that's really good. Ah, I've messed up. Ah, what do I do?
No, you've
No,
got
no,
it.
I knew you fell into my trap. But like, do you see what I wanted to do that? That was not done on purpose, by the way. I did mess up, but I also went, hang on, there's an undo button. So that's good as well. I like my character, and I kind of want to keep my character, and this is what I'm trying to do. I don't know what this button does. Okay, so this is the guy here again, and it's sort of he hasn't placed him in my scene. And also he's sort of moved slightly. So let's just move him back to here and then move this here as well. If you move that away, by the way, it elongates this, and that's really useful sometimes. If you had a lot of text up at the top, then you can actually put something here. Um, Kind of want to do something with this character. I want to save him because he's kind of cool. And I'm not sure whether he will go across into the next panel. Um,
Will it allow you
so
to
I know
copy that
what I'm going
panel?
to do. I'm going to copy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that panel. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on, well, no, go away. Click on that panel. I'm going to remove that one for the time being. Yep. And then what I'm going to do is go back on this panel, stop it. And then I can change and it was conflict that we looked as a thing. And then I can find that same one again, look. And I'm going to change my panel from what it was to that one. And now he's walking through. Okay, so then what we can do is on the way, and we'll change his position, his facial thing in a minute. On the way, Saul sees uh, a an injured, I'm going to say dog here. Hopefully we could find a dog. I'm not sure about injured, but that's sort of okay if we can do that. Then we're going to click on him, and our facial expression is going to be slightly worried. So that's actually quite nice. And actually now look, we like if you look at Saul, now we can make him a bit closer to us and hiding behind the rubble. And then what we can do, he needs some sort of reaction here, and it's like, um, gosh, that's a dog up ahead. And so we can create, okay, that's a dog up ahead. Now I'm going to try and see We don't want backgrounds, but creatures. I can click on creatures. And so, I mean, okay, a toucan would look slightly out of place here, but I'm going to put dog and then see what we've got. Oh my gosh. So the problem is, see, I always want a corgi, so I don't know why, but we're gonna have to put a corgi in this scene. Oh my God, he's so cute. Okay, this is a natural reaction here because he's oh, which is kind of what corgis do. And I wonder if I can flip the corgi. I think I can. I don't know if I can flip him, but I wonder if I can put him sort of by the rubble because actually I've had an idea about the whoops about the little doggy now. Maybe he's not injured. Maybe he's going to tell Saul to take him to a place and he'll runs off and he'll take Saul to a place where he can rescue someone. And maybe that someone's actually his friend. How does that sound, people? Good or bad? And I can't see your comments.
you're getting the thumbs up. They
Yeah,
love
yeah.
it.
See,
Good.
now can you see my creative process? I'm, I'm making this up as I'm going along. This is not planned in any way. I'm following it just from what you're telling me, and then I'm trying to use the tools in the best way. I'm not saying that this is the best, the thing in the world. Um, see, it's an injured dog, and then I wonder if we can put in more words. Can you put something in the bottom, or does it flip it around? Eh, that's quite nice anyway. He sees an injured dog. So I'm going to duplicate the panel and we're going to, hmm, let's try conflict again. Actually, should have some more panels here. So fire's a bit dangerous, but let's see what else we can actually see. Ooh, I quite like this. In fact, I love this for the next panel. So but I'm going to duplicate it first because I'm learnt from before. So we're going to duplicate that. We'll take all of the characters, including the dog across, which is really important. Our backgrounds, still conflict, and I want to find the one with the house, if that's still there. I'm going to put in conflict again as my thing. Again, can you see they don't actually have the natural hazards, but if you put in conflict, it comes up with, similar sorts of like impacts and effects. Come on, more. Here we go. So we're going to change that to this. And then he's going to be running away. So the dog's running ahead of him now. And what we're going to do is take away the peril. We thought there was peril, and the peril was about the dog. And that might make us be interested in things. Well, what we're going to do now is say, okay, on the way, the dog sees an injured dog. But suddenly, the dog starts to run away, leading Saul in another direction. And what we're going to do is, can we flip doggy here? I'm not sure. Flip. Ah, yes. Can you see? So what we're going to do is we're going to have doggy going off in this direction. And we are going to also flip Saul around. Saul's going in a different direction now. We can also change his expression, by the way. Like, let's have a look. Faces, browse all. And then when you go up here, you've got loads more faces. So I wonder if quizzical, because he would be puzzled. Let's try quizzical. Yeah, let's try and do this. And he can go, where on earth is he leading me? So we've got four panels already. So what I want to try and do is resolve this in the next two panels because that will give us one 6-panel comic, 3x2, which is you can actually have that on a A4 page for instance. So we're going to carry on moving this direction. We're going to have him kind of moving somewhere else. Again, we're going to use, excuse me, you'll notice how we're sort of speeding up with some of the things. So I'm going to add a panel. We're going to have a duplicate panel, but we'll change that background as time goes on. So what we're going to do, excuse me, we're going to go click back on that one. We've got our conflict one, and we need to find somewhere else. Again, I'm not sure about, again, I'm not trying to have more peril by having fire, although you can have fire after those sorts of events. Um, it's another house. We've got fire there. Earth.
Justin,
Yes, yes, go on.
there's a comment that it appears that you're limited to 3 panels with the trial subscription.
Ah, oh,
So
they've changed that. They literally did the whole 3 panels.
three.
Okay, okay. They didn't used to do that, so apologies if I've led you down a wrong path. I'm yeah, I did not. I was not aware of that. This is trouble with sometimes they change terms and conditions on things. I've always anyway. Sorry, so apologies if that's the case. So, but even with 3 panels, you get the idea, and you can actually do. I mean, it's the same continuation of the same comic, fixed and on the trial, and are playing around with it. Let me know if that is something that's, yeah, something that they're doing. Um, uh, oh yeah. Okay. I'm going to flip the dog so that he's kind of showing attention, and he's going to be a bit closer to the screen here. We're going to make him a bit bigger because he's closer to the screen as well. So again, we're kind of creating different movement here as well. And then our actions we can change while we're doing this. I'm going to look at different walking ones. Um, some of them are a bit, kind of like this one's kind of like I want to dance, but that's probably not good for this. Here we go. It's quite nice. So then what we can do is can click back on this and then say, what is it, little doggy? What are you trying to tell me? Uh, and then actually, I'm trying to do this here. It can be slightly out of the thing, and then this can be here. And I'm going to add speech to the dog, and it's just going to do, and this is quite a useful thing, putting these little stars around things, and he's just going to sort of make a whining noise because he's a dog and he doesn't talk. So, he's trying to tell him something, but we don't know what he's telling. And then what we're going to do, because we've got a lot of action at the bottom of the screen there, we're going to tip the thing to the top, probably making that tiny bit smaller. Okay. And then what we can do is just say the dog suddenly stops and starts to whine. Okay. Okay, so now what we're going to try like that collapsed
Justin,
buildings, but
Christiana said that the whining
also
is
showed
very accurate.
fire. Thank you very much. So I mean, but I guess that's part of the point as well. So it's quite good. I'm pleased that that's sort of coming across. I kind of wanted this house here, but without the fire. Um, we're going to try this one. We're going to duplicate the panel, and then what we'll do is we will do the same thing as here. Browse all, and then I know there's that panel down here that I can go and grab. and it's kind of got similar houses to what we saw before, but it's also got kind of some other stuff. So we're going to make things a bit smaller here, including the dog, and maybe the dog is kind of, it sounds weird, but maybe he's sort of sniffing at the ground. And also we're going to flip the dog around as well. But maybe the dog's sort of up here. Um, and like the idea of this is kind of we're getting closer to kind of where the person is. And now if we're going to do that, we're also going to have to um, bring in a character. So means we and then we're not going to have a business person, or we're just going to have there we go. That'll do. We're going to add character. And what we try and need to do is try and have this person being in a sort of position of stress or something like that, or duress, and then actually try and create sort of have him laying down. So I'm going to say laying down because that works. And actually, that's quite nice. We're not going to have him laying in the fire, by the way, just to let you know. Um, in fact, I'm going to cover the fire up and have him here. We're going to have the doggy here and try and cover up some fire here. Do that, and then we can make him slightly larger. So again, you can start to see how you can play around and cover stuff up as well, which is actually useful if you don't necessarily want to show fire immediately. And because we've created these two guys at this particular thing, we'll leave that for a second. And then we're going to click on faces, and then this time we're going to put joy as or joyful or overjoyed or any of those sorts of things. Uh, Here you go. This one's quite nice. And then what we can do. Oh, wow. You found Paul. Paul and Saul. It has to be done. Um, what a clever doggy. Are you all right? Are you injured? So again, we've got quite a lot going on in this one. He is happy. We've got this here. We've got the doggy is he's still saying something. Um, now I'm going to put him to the back. And so now what we can do is we can sort of try and show him being slightly trapped under something. We might have to make the dog a bit bigger to do that, or at least the pile of earth that he's got. So again, I mean, like this isn't perfect, right? But it's kind of giving us some sort of ideas. I don't like the fact that he's laying down on fire. So you know, again, like I might play around with this a lot more. But you know, I need to make him slightly larger because otherwise it's just not realistic. And we're going to kind of still put him and cover the fire and have the dog. One foot can be trapped, and that'll do. So we can't tell. There you go. And then if we click on Paul, go away. We can click on our, he says, hopefully, add speech. So he's going to say, I'm okay, but my right leg. I called the, now I want to say fire brigade, What would you guys call it? Called fire service? Who would you say? EMT?
I would,
Someone help me out.
yeah, we would probably just say 911.
Ugh, okay. I call 911. Sorry.
We
See
would
these
probably
these
say 911. I mean, that's what Christiana put. That was my first thought. I mean, we would say, the fire department, or if it was the
nice.
ambulance, it would be like the EMA, or, or emergency services.
So, oh, there you go. Wine turned into something completely different, but there you go. So, with that said, I'm going to click done for a second. So we see what happens next. So what we should have is a 6 panel comic, and we do. Now, the other thing we can do is this. If you kind of play around with the sizes, bada bing, this is what I was trying to show you about having, oh, done it. Sorry. There you go. That's what I was trying to show you about having a 6 panel comic.
What
You'll
did,
notice that, oh, sorry, go on.
Justin, what did you click on just now to make it like to where those six panels were
Oh, I
all?
literally just changed my browser window size. So yeah, it's just a little trick that I've learned over the years. And the reason I've learned it is because you can then screen grab this if the download is a bit weird. Because sometimes I found the download, they're trying to put it in weird spacing and it doesn't work. Again, it's things that kind of kind of don't work very well sometimes. I also need to add and a woo to the doggy who's whining over there to kind of create that. But with that in mind, what I wanted to show you, so what I'm going to do is my first comic, no, we'll call it Tornado Peril and just call continue. So that's really nice. The other thing that it's got now is, and I just want to show you this as well, it has a share button and you can download it, you can print it. And then the other thing that you can do is you can create the link. So what I can do is I can click, if I click on that link button, it will come up with like a link directly to the comic, which means that I can send other people to look at it. It also means that people with that link don't have to be on Pixton or anything like that. But one thing that they can do is kind of just review what you've done and go, oh, I like this or I don't like this. And so you can start bringing in more team members when you're doing something like this as well. So with that said, I can see that my time it's 5:15, your time it's 11:15 maybe. So what I wanted to do is stop there. I'm quite pleased that we've created something from scratch. I think we've created something that showed peril, something that showed a disaster had happened, but actually also there was sort of like a happy ending. And actually, I'm trapped, but I called 911 already. We're also showing someone doing the right thing. We don't know anything about the backstory or anything like that, but that can be another time. You can bring this comic on and actually having going to visit his friend maybe, after he's had medical attention and finding out what he did right, what he did wrong. Maybe he made some wrong decisions. Maybe he made the right decisions, but didn't actually have a shelter to go to. All of those are incredibly important lessons, and they've actually come directly from the social science work that myself and others have done on tornado and societal risk for many years. So with that, I'd like to step back and open it to Q&A if that's okay with everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Justin. If you have questions about this, can you please type them either in the chat box or the Q&A where Christiana and I can see them? Justin, there folks, just saying thank you so much for the presentation. It was a great tutorial. Um, Someone else had to jump to another meeting and they were saying it was great demonstration and presentation. So lots of great feedback there. Does anybody have a question for Justin about how to create this? Or if you have been following along and trying to also create, have you run into any issues that he might be able to help you with?
I mean,
Um,
also, oh yes,
There,
go on.
sorry, there is a question about how did you change the size of the bubbles and the captions? And then so if you'll answer that, and then there's another question after that.
Um, I think it auto changes actually, to be fair. I don't think I think if you double click on it, it may change. But one thing you'll notice is that all of the words are the same size throughout. So it doesn't squish them together too much. So it also it limits you, by the way, with how many words or characters rather that you can put in those speech bubbles, which I think is good. And that's something you definitely need to be thinking about when you're having two interactions. So what tend to find is I experiment by dragging around the speech bubbles to where I think they should go. Are they on the left? Are they on the right? Where should they appear in terms of, like, you'll notice we've used the yellow box almost in every single frame to show something that's happening, to explain something else to the reader. Because otherwise, you've got a picture, you've got a background, you've got some sort of interaction, but what's actually going on? And so that's what I've found, because like you'll notice that last panel, it has a square one, and that's often what happens. It puts it into a square one when there are more words. If you've got less words, it puts it into like the oval shaped bubble, and if you've got a square one, it put it into that. And like I said, also you can have the shouting bubble, which is the jagged one, and I think there's a whisper bubble, and there's definitely a thought bubble. And I use that thought bubble a lot actually because I mean, we could have used it here, but I was just trying to keep it as simple as possible. So I hope that answers the question. And I'm going to click on this one because I need to have that dog going, ow.
Justin, while you're doing that, one of the other questions was, is there a max number that you can save?
Uh, let's have a think. Yes, there is. And what I've had to do, I think it's 36 panels in total. And then when I get to that, I have to then do a new comic, but it's not really a new comic. It's the same comic, if you see what I mean, with the sort of same characters. And I kind of, that's why when I was there at the beginning and I showed you the characters and the avatars, I had a load of old avatars and characters there because I kept them because I knew I was making these comics. So yeah, there is a slight there is, or there was a limit on that in the past. And I'll click done. It will save that for me. Yes, see, that's so much cuter.
And Justin, when you go to download this, does it give
Hmm.
you different formats you can download it in?
So let's just do that. It doesn't give you a lot. It just gives you this. Now they've had these forever like this. So I can't remember if I think it just comes out as a PDF, not a PDF, a JPEG or something like that. If you've got a lot, there's the zip. Uh, It does individual images, and then you have to recompile them. What I tend to do is do what I've got on screen here like this. Then I use a screen grab tool to kind of to create this. And then what I do is I import that into Photoshop. And if you've got people who are like techie and into Photoshop, I then make them CMYK and I change the PPI to make them better for print, so more than 300 PPI, which is pixels per inch, by the way. If you don't know what that PPI meant, that's for an acronym check for everyone. And then I'll save those as CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and and that's what printers tend to use. If you're using it for an online thing, it doesn't need to be such high definition. So literally just doing a screen grab of this. So if I try that now. I don't know if it's nope, don't do that, Justin. Sorry. Um, might make me log in again there. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I was trying to do something else. I was trying to be too clever then. But yeah, but that's what I've tended to do in the past, and that's worked quite well with me.
Great. This has been so informative, Justin. I really appreciate it. Are there any final questions for Justin? Justin, there's just a lot of thank you for the tips and the training and those kinds of comments. I'm not seeing any other questions actually come
Yeah,
in.
and that's
Um,
fine. The other thing is, if you can always reach out to me in the PowerPoint that was distributed yesterday. The last slide does have my personal email address. So, feel free to reach out and say, hey, I did have a question, but I didn't want to say online. And that's absolutely fine. I really don't mind that sort of, a question.
Oh, and thanks, Christiana's just just reminding us all that you can just do Control Windows S to screen grab the window.
Yes, I'm on a Mac, which is something different. I was trying to do it then, but because I'm presenting the screen, it didn't like it and it freaked out.
All right. Well, Justin, we sure do appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. I know I'm excited to start trying to see what I can put together. I really love that you can convey so much in the cartoon setting, and I feel like this really resonates with a lot of the audiences that we serve. So we really appreciate you doing this. If anybody has any final questions, we can stay on for a second, but um, just just really wanted to reiterate how useful I feel like this is going to be in risk communication.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure. And I enjoyed the creative process because it really was. I didn't know what we were going to do today. And although I've got ideas, I love the idea. There's an injured dog, but is it an injured dog? No, it wasn't an injured dog. And it changed the narrative from going for something that's like, oh, peril and a dog to a cute doggy leading someone to his friend that he was started off looking for. And I mean, that we did that in 45 minutes, by the way. So that sort of shows, hopefully, how useful a tool this is. I mean, I think if I'm being honest, there is a cost for this. I personally have had this cost for years because I just think it's such a cool tool, but actually it is something that you could write into budgets and into grant proposals like, oh yeah, we want this for the project lifespan or something like that. So, there are sort of good ways of making sure that you've got the funding for it if you're in an organization that, things are a bit tighter.